A question in the wind. Have you ever wondered what happens to a dream when it's buried under poverty, dust, and expectations? In the heart of a quiet village where the roads were muddy and the nights hummed with crickets, lived a boy named Arav. He was just another face in the crowd, but his eyes carried a storm of curiosity. Unlike the others, he didn't want to just grow up to plow the fields like his father. He wanted to know why the stars moved, why the rain fell, why numbers danced in patterns. But in his world, books were a luxury, and dreams, a silent rebellion. Still, every morning he walked 4 kilometers barefoot to a worn-down school with a broken roof and a chalkboard half erased by time. He was often late, sometimes hungry, but never absent. Because for Arav, every letter he learned was a step out of his fate. This is his story, and by the end, you'll see how a spark of passion can light the darkest paths. Village Echoes. Arav's village, nestled between low hills and mustard fields, was beautiful, but harsh. People rose with the sun, worked until their bones ached, and rarely looked beyond the horizon. His father tilled the land from dawn to dusk, his hands like rough bark, eyes dim with struggle. His mother sold vegetables in the nearby market, often returning with only enough for a single meal. To many, survival was the only ambition. But Arav was different. Even as a child, he asked questions the elders couldn't answer. Why does the moon change shape? He once asked, earning a smack from an impatient uncle. Think less. Work more, they'd say. But some thoughts refused to be silenced. Arav's questions became his shield, not against poverty, but against surrender. The teacher who saw. At school, most teachers were tired, underpaid, overwhelmed, and disheartened. But Mr. Sharma, a wiry man with thick glasses, noticed Arav. He saw how the boy stayed after class, copying diagrams from torn books, reading aloud to himself. One day, Sharma asked, "Why do you study so hard, Arav?" Arav replied simply, "Because I want to understand." From that day, Sharma gave him extra notes, old textbooks, and even lent him his own dictionary. For the first time, Arav found someone who didn't laugh at his dreams. Sharma told him, "The world respects those who make themselves valuable." It was a seed planted deep, that education wasn't just escape, it was power. And Arav clung to it like a lifeline. Hunger and homework. Every evening, Arav sat on the mud floor under a dim kerosene lamp, solving math problems with chalk on slate. Often, the rumble in his stomach competed with the silence in the room. There were nights when he studied with only boiled rice water as dinner. But he never let the hunger in his body become hunger in his mind. He made notebooks from torn newspapers, learned English by listening to village radio, and memorized science from Sharma's borrowed books. His friends mocked him for being the professor, but he didn't mind. In his heart, he was already living a life beyond the village. He knew the pain was temporary, but knowledge? That was forever. And in that darkness, his will became unbreakable. The first test. One day, news came that a district scholarship exam was being held in the town 10 kilometers away. The prize? Free education in the city for one deserving student. Arav knew this was his shot. He studied harder than ever, waking before dawn and sleeping past midnight. He walked to Sharma's house in the evenings for lessons and refused to let fatigue win. The day of the test, he didn't even have proper shoes. Still, he walked, with blistered feet and a beating heart. The questions were hard, but not harder than the life he already knew. He wrote until his hand cramped, then rewrote, because this was more than a test. It was his rebellion against destiny. Waiting and whispers. The results would take 2 weeks. In that time, Arav tried to stay busy, helping his father, studying more, pretending not to care. But every second ticked louder than the last. Villagers laughed, city scholarships are for rich kids. Even his own father said, "Don't get your hopes too high." But Arav already lived in hope, it was the only thing that kept him going. One evening, as he fetched water, Sharma came running, waving a letter. Arav read it once. Then again. He had won. The first in the village. That night, he didn't sleep, not because of fear or hunger, but because dreams had finally replied. Farewell to fields. Leaving wasn't easy. His mother cried quietly. His father stayed silent. Arav packed his few belongings, mostly books, into a small bag. As he boarded the old bus to the city, he looked back once. The fields waved, golden under the sun. He wasn't escaping the village, he was carrying it with him. In every calculation, in every sentence he would write, the village would live. The city loomed ahead, fast, loud, and unknown. But he was ready. Because the boy from the fields now walked like someone who had earned his future. City storms. The city was chaos. Honking cars, crowded streets, buildings that touched the clouds. Arav felt like an alien. He was mocked for his accent, his clothes, his rural roots. But he didn't fight back with fists, he fought back with grades. Every insult was a new fuel. He spent hours in the library, nights revising, mornings running to classes. He lived in a tiny hostel room, often skipping meals to buy books. It was hard, but not harder than watching his mother sell vegetables for scraps. He had survived worse. Now, he would thrive. Letters to home. Every week, Arav wrote letters to his parents, describing the city, the classes, the people. He made sure to send money back when he could, small amounts, but earned with pride. His mother read every letter twice, eyes wet with both pride and worry. His father, though still silent, began to keep those letters in a wooden box. The village slowly started to see Arav not as a dreamer, but as proof. Proof that someone like them could rise. That poverty wasn't a life sentence. That education could be the chisel that carved a new world. A mentor's gift. In college, Arav met Professor Iyer, an old physicist with a sharp mind and a kinder heart. Iyer noticed how Arav devoured books, asked deep questions, stayed late in labs. One day, he said, "You remind me of myself, only hungrier." He gave Arav access to rare resources, introduced him to science competitions, and encouraged him to publish papers. Under Iyer's wing, Arav blossomed. He started winning awards, speaking at events, and gaining recognition. But he never grew arrogant. He knew every step forward came with a duty, to never forget where he came from, to be the ladder for others after him. The village celebrates. When Arav won his first National Science Award, it made the local paper. Someone brought a copy to the village, and soon the entire community buzzed with pride. Elders who once scoffed now nodded with approval. Children pointed to his photo and said, "I want to be like him." His mother smiled for days. His father built a wooden frame for the newspaper clipping. Arav had become more than a son, he was now a symbol. He wasn't just succeeding for himself, he was carrying 100 silent dreams with him. And deep inside, he promised, "One day, I'll return, not as a visitor, but as a builder of bridges. Between what was, and what could be." Failing forward. In his third year, Arav faced a crushing academic failure. A critical research experiment collapsed. He lost a scholarship opportunity. It shook him, for the first time, he doubted himself. He stopped attending lectures, isolated himself in his room. But then, he remembered his mother's hands, cracked, overworked, yet steady. And Mr. Sharma's words, "Fall 7 times, stand up 8. Arav got up. He redid the entire project from scratch, working twice as hard. The revised paper earned him an international internship. Failure didn't break him. It refined him. He realized, resilience wasn't just about pushing forward. It was about getting back up with more wisdom. Across oceans. Arav boarded a plane for the first time, heart pounding with awe. He had been accepted into a summer research program in Germany. There, he met students from all over the world, confident, fluent, worldly. He felt small again, like the village boy surrounded by skyscrapers. But he reminded himself, intelligence isn't measured by accent or appearance. Within weeks, he became a standout participant. His ideas were fresh, his work ethic unmatched, his hunger noticeable. Professors praised his creativity and humility. He returned to India not just with certificates, but with clarity. The world was big, yes. But so was he. Giving back. After graduation, Arav was offered high-paying jobs, prestigious PhDs, and lucrative paths. But he returned home first. He walked through the same muddy lanes, now lined with children waving at him. He visited his old school, where the walls still cracked and the benches still broke. There, he made a decision: he would build a new school, modern, free, and rooted in curiosity. He met donors, NGOs, and government bodies. It took a year of bureaucracy and sweat. But finally, the Arav Learning Center opened, a school where no child would be told their dreams were foolish. It wasn't charity. It was repayment. The next dreamers. The school filled quickly, children from nearby villages, boys and girls alike. They were given books, uniforms, and most importantly, belief. Arav made science fun, English understandable, and learning exciting. He brought in volunteers, created digital classrooms, and started evening sessions for adults too. Soon, a new culture began, one that didn't just worship hard work, but smart work. Parents once hesitant now urged their kids to study. Arav watched quietly as a new generation rose, fearless, curious, and kind. He wasn't building a school, he was building a movement. Recognition and humility. News of Arav's efforts spread, awards, interviews, and documentaries followed. But he always redirected the spotlight to my teachers. My village. My parents. They built me. He was offered political positions, global panels, even a chance to work abroad again. He declined many, because his mission wasn't complete. He stayed rooted, not because he lacked ambition, but because he'd already found purpose. His story wasn't just his own, it belonged to everyone who once feared their dreams were too big. His message remained clear: if I could rise, barefoot and hungry, then so can you. The applause never made him forget the silence he came from. A letter from the past. One afternoon, while sorting old papers, Arav found a crumpled note. It was the first essay he'd written in Sharma's class, titled, "When I Grow Up." It said, "I want to build a school where no one is ever called foolish for asking why. He smiled, heart full. He had lived that dream, word for word. Sometimes, the dreams we write as children are not fantasies. They are blueprints. He framed the essay and placed it in his office, beside the national awards. Because that piece of paper held more power than any trophy. It was a promise fulfilled. The final talk. Years later, Arav was invited to speak at a global education summit. Standing before thousands, he began not with his credentials, but a story. Of a boy who walked barefoot to school. Who studied under dim lights, ate one meal a day, and asked too many questions. He spoke of failure, hunger, and hope. Of how education wasn't just about books, but dignity. By the end, the crowd stood and clapped. Not for the man with awards. But for the boy who never stopped believing. He ended with, "The question is never where you come from. It's where you're determined to go." A question answered. So, what happens to a dream buried in dust? It waits. It waits for someone like Arav to water it with courage, sunlight, and sweat. It fights through rocks, breaks through silence, and blooms where no one thought it could. Today, in the same village where dreams were once feared, they are now planted freely. Arav walks through his school courtyard, watching children laugh and learn. And he knows, the cycle has begun. A new boy, a new girl, somewhere in that crowd, will rise too. Because he did. And that changes everything.